the current GMO Act area. First, before we release something into for commercial purposes, there must be proper trials and testing. There must be labeling of the end product, whether it's poor for, but it must be labeled GMO. And most importantly, like we just emphasized now, it must be traceable. At some point, if we stop, we must be able to stop it. So, my dog, there's a lot of decisions and so many things happening in our space that it's either we are not aware of or we are just not participating in the conversation. That's one of the topic we discuss, GMO 2.0 first time. But again, there's just so many things that are happening. And the funny thing is, not the scary, but kind of scary, because if you are not, whether you are involved or participating, but laws and decisions are being made. So again, that just emphasized to me, like we discussed already, that is why I for one to stay in the know of what's going on always. Otherwise, or
for you trying to replant your seeds
and then they
don't perform.
They don't perform. You ask yourself what is going on, but it's not being in the know. But anyway, welcome to another podcast, Yaplasi. On today's podcast, GMO 2.0. So we all understand what GMO is, but now there is GMO 2.0. Those who know GMO 2.0, the current debate that is going on, it was concluded last year by the executive committee that approves or governs the GMO Act of South Africa. Industry is saying that GMO should not, the GMO 2.0 should not be regulated. The counter statement to that is GMO 2.0 should be regulated. So that is currently the big debate that is going on. It was concluded last year, like I just said, but private went for an appeal, or GMO 2.0 should not be regulated by the laws. But stay tuned, we're going to discuss it, and you guys are going to get some little bit depth on the Ritsore Mokai. Buta. So
tell me here, which side are you on? Like, how do you feel about this thing not being regulated? Because it's quite precise. You know what I mean. They know what they're doing. The science, they can prove what they are doing. What do you think, Jorge? What do you think? Where do you stand? Should it be regulated or should not it be we should not regulate it? What do you say?
I feel like let's just to give the audience also a bit of context on what is GMO 2.0 now and how is it different from the usual GMO that was invented in the 70s and 80s.
And bear in mind, we do have GMOs. Like most of the maize that we eat, sorghum,
maize, soya, cotton, it's GMO.
So
so GMO 2.0, like you just said, is much more precise. The old GMO 1.0, or the original GM. So what they used to do, how they created those GMs is they would take whatever desired trait from, whether it's a bacteria, whether it's a animal, whether it's a virus, and put it into that particular crop so that the crop can function a certain way. Like your BT maize, they put They took a certain trait from a soil bacteria and put it in the maize so that the
So it
maize
can be resistant
to glyphosate on first
Yeah,
time. That is why you
yeah.
can apply glyphosate on your maize and maize
all the weeds will die,
All-
and then your maize will still stand.
because it has that foreign gene
in it,
in it.
designed to be resistant to that gene.
One would you see. So
yeah.
the significance of GMO 2.0 is that it's so precise to a point where they call it the ultimate gene editing. They need not take a desired trait from anywhere
anywhere
else.
else. They can tweak it.
They can tweak that one. So if like the old GMO,
Let's stay with maize. And
Yeah,
we'll just-
maize.
yeah.
with the old GMO, maize, like we just said now, hore, they took a certain trait, the soil bacteria by Kenyamo. But 2.0 is so precise where if they know that particular trait and they know the genome of that trait, they can edit the maize genome to simulate that one. So they don't need to take that and put it in here. No, they can edit this one and ish up with predictable outcomes on first time. So bara genie it's so A, B, C, C, and then they can edit this one without adding foreign particles or foreign DNA.
And one of the things is not traceable, right?
It's
That is
not-
one.
Thank you. It's not traceable because the way that you used to track GMO, the normal GMO, is haunka the maize plant and you analyze it with your microscope and so on. Wabona or Norman, there's a trait in this maize that does not belong in here because I'm getting into from the. So you can. That is how they knew this was GMO. That is how they distinguished between organic and GMO because they could actually go there and see, or no, there's a foreign RNA or DNA or genome in this. But with this one, because they're not putting in anything external or anything foreign on first time, it's hard to trace because even that change that what industry is saying, the change that they're making in that plant, because they're not putting in anything foreign, that could have happened naturally as well on first time. So it will be hard for anyone to know, Hore, because there's nothing foreign. How do you analyze? How do you pick up, Hore, it was played with? Because if you can, even if you pick up, Hore, it was played with, but you can't pinpoint. I can say on first time because you can just do the comparison. So it's untraceable.
And it's not proven yet. You don't know the outcomes of it.
We don't know the long-term
Term of it,
outcome of it. And Leona, it's still as risky as the initial GMO, because the initial GMO was still risky. Risky in a sense, sorry, even if you take that particular trait inside your maize, even if you get the trait inside your maize, but because you put in something foreign, something else changed the maize on first time. Whether it's a chemical reaction, whether it's a nutrient imbalance, but something changes. It doesn't stay the same as is on first time. And we don't know the long-term complication yet, I think. Well, industry is saying because of GMO, we have 20 years, according to the paper we read, we have 20 years worth of experience, and we know that it's safe is what. But it's not safe because there's a lot of papers also written that show that even the old GMO was horrible. And even the GMO 2.0 is still the same. But you know, industry is pushing it that it should not be regulated on first time. So that is in essence just the difference between the two. This one is just much more advanced, much more predictable, and much cheaper for them to do on first time. They shortened that time period it took to create a GMO, the normal GMO, and with GMO 2.0, the time it takes to create a GMO crop is much quicker on first time because it's so precise and you're not doing other stuff. But Leona same, it still has long-term effects that we do not know of on first time. Like I just mentioned, the chemical imbalances that might
Which means
occur.
we need to apply more fertilizer, maybe.
Who knows on first time what consequences it might have. Even if it doesn't have consequences for us on a production level for Ronadi Farmer on first time, like a nutritional level, maybe it might kawata consumer because the protein level has went down now, for example. It's producing more carbohydrates, for example, but stuff like that. So We still need a longer period to study this and just to develop a method to trace that thing. Once it's released into the market.
And now we're
trace it.
speaking of GM, the original GM is about,
Yeah.
we see we have like 20 years and we're still saying we don't have it. It's not where it's supposed to be, or even if it does what it's supposed to do, but it will be side effects on its
Inali
own.
side effects
Understand?
it's ayo.
So do you think the industry will wait 20 years to put that on trial and see where it will go?
Never, because they're already pushing it down. Like they're already pushing it. Even the verdict that was taken last year by the executive committee governing the act, the GMO act, they took a final decision already. Didenge must be labeled on first time. But
They took a
private,
decision for it must be labeled.
it must be
And then the
labeled.
private sector doesn't want it to be labeled.
To be labeled, they wanted to.
But why
release
is
it
that? Why is that? What do you think is that?
Well, when it comes to GMO, even the GMO, the normal one, even besides the 2.0 on first time, is when it's labeled, industry says that it persuades people not to buy it because
When it's labeled.
when it's labeled. So when me and you go to a grocery store, and we pick up a pack of rice and another one, and the one has on GMO on first time, because people are not so well aware sharp or GMO king, like it's almost like a repellent on first time. People won't willingly consume it
Yeah, true that.
on first time.
Yeah.
That is the biggest problem that private is having on first, and that is why they want it not to be regulated under the act, because the act says that the current GMO act first, before we release something into for commercial purposes, there must be proper trials and testing. There must be labeling of the end product, whether it's poor, but it must be labeled GMO.
Yeah.
And most importantly, like we just emphasized now, it must be traceable on first time. At some point, if we stop, we must be able to stop it on swap. So yeah, they don't want it to be labeled because it will scare people away from buying the product. On first time. And what problem are you solving if people are not buying the product?
At the end of the day, it's all about the consumer.
It's all about the consumer and what the consumer thinks. So
Yeah, but what is your take? How do you think it will end? Like eventually, or like where do you think it's going? Because
yeah,
if us as farmers we decide to take it, I don't think. Yeah, I think
to use the seeds
to
of
use
this
the
new-
seeds.
Yeah,
If us as farmers decide, or no, we are using this seed.
yeah.
How, like, because they will tell you the benefits of the seed. I'm pretty much sure they will say, no, GMO, yeah, it has downsides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And GMO 2.0, you can benefit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And us as farmers, just to be honest, we're not more business. Like, we want to make a living, understand? But when you're looking at it from a distance, where do you see it, like, ending?
It felt like
Yeah.
I think it is down to us as the farmers, my G. The farmers and the consumer on first time to also voice our opinion. What do we say? What do we think? Like, it's difficult for us now because we talk as a consumer and as a producer. It makes sense as a producer to use, let's say they breed a new cabbage plant that doesn't require any fertilizer, because already it makes sense for us because fertilizer got especially now with the Ukraine war and so on. So it's much easier for us to buy that thing because Lorona, like you said, the bottom line. So I genuinely feel like government should intervene, because me personally, I am not a big fan of GMO on first time. It's not something that I would willingly consume if I know that if it was properly labeled and there was a different option. If Kibaya Pofo, the one is GMO, the one is not, I would go for the one that is not GMO.
As a consumer or as a farmer?
As a consumer.
And then as a farmer?
As a farmer, it's difficult because the consumer doesn't really care.
And
For a product, it's okay, and a lot of it's so I feel like government should intervene if we don't want to promote GMO 2.0 or GMO in J. government, that is the role, my understanding of the role of the Department of Agric and government as a whole. If system is span to change the system on Frostan. But in the current system that we're in, because we started using GMO 80% to 90% of the pap that we eat is GMO maize on Frostan. The soya that is going, so the system, Kabuyona, dictates to us as farmers to go for the most convenient thing on Frostan, because consumers don't want to pay an expensive price.
Exactly, like, and where I stand as a farmer, and as now, okay, before consumer as a farmer, where do I stand with this whole GMO, especially 2.0? I think if they push it long enough, they're going to win.
Yeah, no, they always win.
Yeah,
They always
okay.
win, unless we as farmers share our
Here's
opinion.
the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about us as farmers. Ne? Everyone, people expect to get good quality for low prices.
Yeah.
The problem starts there, right, as farmers. And so it's not if maybe I've planted maybe whatever cabbage. I don't have the capacity maybe to call people and clean or whatever, de-weed or whatever. The problem is my profit margin is so low.
If your operational cost goes up, that means your profit margin is shrinking.
Which means I'm out.
Yeah.
So and that is where I feel like they're still going to win. If the government can come in, yeah, I don't know how and like, but and we can, and Rona Esbato, man, we start thinking for farmers. Like, hey man, like we bargain for everything, and especially when it comes to
price
food.
taker.
But when it comes to some like certain things, they are of no use to us. You will never bargain. That thing is so much. No, but for something that keeps you going, you are willing to compromise on that. So I just think, GMO 2.0. When as a farmer, when I'm speaking, I think it's going to win. Unless us as individuals or us as a nation, as the consumers, we start being aware of certain things.
And telling the government what we want. But I think even if, and you're right, because private will always win if there's no counter, if there's no one challenging them. Because who like the papers we read on this, and guys, the papers we'll have the descriptions down below of the papers that informed this conversation. So the one paper is of AFASA, that is the Academy of Science of South Africa. So that is the scientific body that represents South Africa internationally. Their key objective is to promote objective science, and so that is the one paper. We'll have the link. And the other paper that counter what private is saying is African Center for Biodiversity, where they shared more information on to say why they do not agree with what private is saying. So I think if there's no counter, private will always win. But even if private wins via legislation on Frostam, and they get a law approved that GMO 2.0, for an example, should not be regulated under the Act, that is fine. No problem. They can win that battle, that political battle. But if us as consumers, not as farmers now, if us as consumers are aware of what GMO is and the consequences of GMO and the negative impacts it has on nature, and we decide not to buy the product, whether the legislation is legal,
we have the last say.
We have the last say, because we are the consumers who buy that product. And that is why again, industry, private is don't want it to be regulated under the law, because first and foremost, if it's regulated under the law, it has to be labeled.
And they accept or no, we've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
One good you see, but as long as it's labeled, people now have a choice to say I buy. So even if they win that battle, I just feel like if Rona as consumers and if Rona as farmers, even us as farmers, dog, if we were to decide to reap, but sadly now in Mzansi, the situation is, where do you get indigenous seeds?
No.
Like we are so dependent on commercial seeds that private will win anyway, because whatever we planting seeds, and we depend from private. We depend on private. Even the cabbage that we have and the spinach, you can't harvest those seeds, especially the spinach. You can't harvest those seeds to reuse them because you're crossing the boundary because it's not legal on first time. You have to go and buy seeds from the distributor, from the dealership.
And the seeds
again.
are expensive.
Seeds are expensive.
Seeds are expensive.
dog.
Like
That's why.
they set you back some couple.
Floppo is we as farmers, I feel like we're not being part of the conversation. And even if we are part of the conversation, the system, even if we say we want organic seeds, the system is set up in such a way that people don't want to pay high prices for because if there's a spray the pesticides and whatever not, and we rely solely on manpower. Cabbage ya rona it'll from 10 rand all of a sudden it's now 20 rand, and the consumer would not want to pay 20 rand. So it also pushes us to go for the most cost
Speaking of that,
effective.
man, and I know now I'm a bit out to GM. So now, do you think if you do that, you'd be like you'd opt for exporting instead
If
of
you-
if you go organic?
Yeah,
You would rather go exporting than supply your
local market.
local market.
There's a big demand, even in Mzansi, for organic foods on first time, and that is why I believe that the conversation is held low key of what is really going on, because people are aware. People are aware on first time. So yeah, it's tough. It's a bit tricky on first time. But my point is, people are aware. Even if you go for the export market, which in Europe is a big market, and like I just mentioned now, even in Mzansi it's a big market, but you're still operating within a system on first time. Go Woolly, see that they supply organic, and that is why their foods are so crazy expensive on first time. But majority of the population can't afford Woolies. That is why ShopRite is the biggest retailer, Mzansi, because that is where all the accessible food is on first time. So yeah, even if one wanted to go,
So okay, check. If really now we are saying hore GM, there's low cost, like there's kinda like you can save. You can
it's
save.
convenient.
It's convenient, yeah. The right time is it's convenient. And majority of us in South Africa, on first time, we can afford cabbage at 30 randa, for an example, on first time. Like there is kind of my point, or there is where they will win. And they will be, yeah, it will be convenient us as farmers, unless like for now, the only way we can push this thing, it's when the government and it will realize, or small scale farmers, just like India is doing, Joe, just to realize, or small scale farmers are actually even these people can actually produce and feed the nations on first time. I believe that is the only one of the ways the Lord government win on first time. And there's plenty of people who wants to be farmers. Like if I can count what we've been to college with, and they do want to be farmers, but we don't have support. Like I wish I could farm. But
Even Rona, who have already started, our extension officers are so.
nah, but but now for me, honestly, when I look at it in the long term, the only way to survive this thing is when by the government can the process of funding, especially the youth, and especially the youth they are from colleges, like your Tombi, your Pampoon, your Fort Cox, like those are the people who have energy. They know that they have the know-hows of it. And if you conquer this thing of GMs and
and go a different way,
in an organic way, and produce a healthier nation. It's by pushing the youth
to get involved.
but more especially, and me, I'm specific, not just you, to understand, because I'm 3 years there, understand, to study for
already made up his mind to
understand, not just anyone, understand, not just the youth, because we're not Spanish, the youth dog. I mean, like, we could graduate really 50. If they had to pay 50, or something like 4, 5, 5, how many farms?
Everyone on only 2 hectares, 5 hectares.
Like, for me, if the government, it's like really wants to stop this thing, that is the only way to go to produce many more small-scale farmers.
In conclusion, because you touched on export, and I just organized my thoughts proper now on first time. Ori, the government's role, government will do what the people tell the government to do.
Yeah, true.
Understand? But where we are standing now, industry is the only one that is applying pressure to government. That is why industry is always winning when it comes to laws and so.
True.
A good example of our reference are India now. A good example is also recently with the strikes that were happening in India. On Frostan. So the strikes were all about, basically they wanted to convert India into a system that we are operating under, where it's supply and demand that dictates the
Well,
price. On Frostan.
That thing doesn't work. Like,
The farmers in India brought India to a complete standstill.
alright.
And for a good 3 to 4 years of persistent strike, there are
Yeah,
people.
but the last strike.
Was crazy. On
Yeah, the
Frostan.
last strike.
But point is, the farmers won on Frostana. Even though government introduced those laws, of course influenced by private, but the power just shows, sorry, we as farmers, Lerona, we are not as fragile or as vulnerable as
But check.
we
check.
think.
Check.
Yeah.
Or what about India? India is like, there are more like small scale farmers go India are feeding the nation.
Are feeding
Frostan.
India.
Come be us.
And it can trade by Bali on Frostan. Because once it's a matter of supply and demand, the big guys, you're commercializing a Greek now, so the big guys are going to win.
I think for Rona, not is mission impossible. No, I don't believe for something's impossible, but it's going to take like platforms like this on Frostan or whatever feed.
For us to get part of the conversation.
But feed to la jamba on Frostan, it's going to take platforms like this because you're not participating enough.
Yeah,
Nice.
true.
Especially as the youth on Frostan. Just when we started reading these papers, I was like, man, I was surprised how much I don't know.
Continue to the so laws are being and it's true, but I don't fault you, dog, and for many people as well. We are so busy trying to make a living that we do not have time for politics and to see what's going on.
But those
Because
things
are
affect at the end of the day. That's the problem on Frostan. Those things
we need to make time.
and do affect more than you think they do. Like directly. You with your money.
But because we are everyday hustle our own stress, by the time you realize, or Eban, this has been going on, the law's already been formalized. Now you are not allowed to trade seeds or sell seeds or whatever it may be.
And this thing of trading seeds and it's a big thing there.
It's a deep one.
Up there in Africa. And we need to chop it up, Leon, sometime about this thing of seeds. Like I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Or what's going on with the seed laws.
Yeah, but like
that farmers are not allowed to trade amongst themselves seeds.
Like and you remember the spinach? We had spinach. We had seeds. Like we had seeds. I'm not allowed.
Who harvested the seeds? Even if we're not about to plant, you're not allowed.
And like dog, the seeds 1 kg is like almost 1,000.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at 1,000 here. Guys save. But I cannot do that. And those things are settled. But when you,
that is what happens when we are not involved as farmers. We are not organizing ourselves and dictating how the law should work. If private continues being the only one doing the research, organizing and lobbying and appealing, if they are the only ones, government at the end of the day, the nation is sharp, the farmers are sharp, there's no counter statement, or there's no. So, hey man, let industry win. Industry did the research and so on.
But I think now it's
organize.
time. Yeah, it's time. Yeah. It's time for us to really put in the work and be part of the conversation, man. And so
make our voices heard.
Yeah, because these things they affect whether we like it or not. And once you start seeing that, whether you like it or not, certain decisions they will affect.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Oh my G, I think GMO 2.0 everyone back at home, you watching, please make sure that if you're not on par with the conversation that we were just having, make sure that you check out the links below, download the paper yourself. There was just a review and us giving our opinions on the matter. Download the papers, go through it yourself, and make sure that you are becoming part of the conversation. Plusing is a platform that brings farmers together for this purpose, to share insights, to become part of the conversation. As much as we are price takers, the laws, we should not just be law takers, if there's a term like that. But guys, let's become part of the conversations, let's become informed. And with that said, agriculture is about pop and flays.
But there's me pop and place.
Dolo. With that said, peace and love, guys.